I'm thankful for the East Brunswick Historical Society for allowing me to speak here once again. In deciding what else to talk about, it was hard to decide when I started reading up on all these taverns, inns, and hotels that had once existed in this town many years ago. I'm like, wait, there were places to go back then? But yeah, we did have our fair share of those, and I will be covering as much of them as I can, or at least whatever I feel is worth speaking about. So with that said, we'll go back to some of the earliest known taverns in the area, starting with this place. I don't have a visual for it. This was Jehu's Tavern. It was allegedly located over on Ruse Lane and Cranberry Road. It was built in the late 18th century. It was owned by Jehu Dunham. Yes, that is who they named Dunham's Corner Road after. He was a Revolutionary War veteran, and interesting to note is that around the same spot where that tavern stood, another hotel would be built in its place later on, and I will discuss that when we get there. So now this is another place that dates back to the Revolutionary War. This was the Spencer Hotel, or Railroad Hotel, as it is labeled on some maps. It was located on Old Bridge Turnpike in Main Street, where the Village Deli is. It was owned by the Spencers. Louis Spencer, who was one of the proprietors, was one of the proprietors. He was born in Pennsylvania in 1805 and died in 1870. I believe he had 4 kids, and the hotel would be burned in a fire on April 13th, 1871. It was about $15,000 loss and about $2,500 worth of furniture destroyed. So yeah, that was quite a loss. But these were pretty common back then, as you might imagine. Now I mentioned Old Bridge Turnpike. Now, there's a reason they called it Old Bridge Turnpike. It wasn't just some name they gave it. It actually was, at one point, a turnpike like the New Jersey Turnpike is today, in that you had to pay a toll, and it also had its own turnpike authority, the East Brunswick and New Brunswick Turnpike Authority. So as far as I know, the road was laid out sometime in the 1800s, and given this was such a popular traveling route for people, heading, to New York or down by the shore, it is expected they would build a number of inns along that corridor, and this was one of them, the Swan Hotel. We know it is on the 1850 Middlesex County map as Tice's Hotel. It was owned by Saxton M. Tice, whom they named Tice's Lane after. And during those early years, they would have a number of fun activities like pigeon shooting matches and dog fights. You don't see that at a typical Marriott. But so he owned it up until his death in 1874, and went through a number of different owners over the years. One of them being William Lowe. Interesting thing about him. His son, William Lowe Jr., one night he was coming home to his barn. He was intoxicated, and he finds that there was a horse left at his barn. The man who left that horse there went by the name George Kistler, and Lowe wanted Kistler's horse out of the barn, which he obliged. But then one thing led to another, and Lowe Jr. was shot multiple times. This happened not far off from the hotel. Based on his condition, it didn't seem like he would make it, but he did miraculously. And Kistler would face jail time, and he sued the man for $20,000. And this was in 1896, mind you. So, sometime later, Daniel Kelly would own the place, and he was quite an interesting guy. He had multiple arrests, one for assaulting a police officer in New Brunswick while intoxicated, and another for selling liquor without a license. And after which Steve Horvath owned the hotel, and he was arrested in 1907 for selling liquor without a license. And as far as we know, the hotel was no longer operational by the 1910s, and it would be moved across the street in 1924 by the Raritan Clay Products Company, and not much else is really known about what became of it. It is, I would have to assume, long gone, and I believe that's where the Walgreens on Old Bridge Turnpike is situated. I think. Now this over here was the Old Bridge Hotel. The building dates back to the early 19th century. It was perhaps best known locally for one of the people who used to stay there was a John D. Rockefeller, the famous business tycoon, and that hotel was owned by the Treats, and I believe we have one of the descendants, or at least by marriage, here today. Interesting thing about that was in 1906, a woman by the name of Nora Weber burned to death while trying to light the stove, and caught onto the carpet, and unfortunately she suffered from her wounds and did not survive. But when Prohibition happened, Patrick Rocks would end up owning the place, and he certainly did not follow the Prohibition laws that were in place. He had faced multiple fines and raids, and there were times that the place had to be padlocked, and in 1932 he faced a 10-day jail sentence for it. And so eventually he's out of the picture, and a man by the name of I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Edward Kaladinskas would take it over, and it became the Silver Inn, and he would continue that well into the 1950s. Fire destroyed much of the interior in 1947, and sometime around I think 1960, once the hotel was vacant, the fire department burned it down in a burning practice. I believe that's how the Roman Smith farmhouse was also taken out. And so currently that is now the site of the community garden in the village of Old Bridge. Now there was another hotel that existed in that same area. This was the the Riverside Bar and Hotel was located on Emerson Street. It was owned by the Squires family, and it was, I believe, built sometime around the latter part of the 19th century, and I think by the 1920s or 30s, the hotel aspect of it was taken out, and it just became a bar. But one interesting thing to note about this place was in 1901, an Old Bridge resident who was, I believe, 67 years old at the time, decided to place a wager that he could walk from the hotel all the way to Lakewood in just under 10 hours. And he, I believe he left at around 9:27 p.m. and he would arrive at Lakewood by 7:25 a.m. And for some reason, he would every time he crossed a bridge, he would dance a jig. Some people did strange things in 1901, but the building still stands today. It is currently a private residence. Now I mentioned about Jehu's Tavern earlier. On the same site where that was around the 1820s or 30s, they would build this place. This was the J.C. Hall Hotel over on Cranberry Road and Ruse Lane. It was on the 1850 Middlesex County map. It is listed as the Franklin Hotel. And no knowing who Franklin was exactly, but because of its centralized location, it was kind of basically a town hall. A lot of political meetings and even elections were held there during this time, and sometime in 1905, the building was struck by lightning, which damaged the ceiling and broke 3 bottles. So the hotel seemed to be operational up until about the 1930s, and eventually by the 50s, with the township changing, it would be demolished, and currently is now the site of the BP gas station. Now, some of you might recognize this place because it's still standing. This was the Cosmopolitan Hotel. It was built in the early 19th century. It was first owned by Edward Kearney, which he would grow and sell fruits and vegetables there. And sometime around 1886, Bartley McGough would purchase the house and would make it into a little hotel. And it was certainly the perfect site for one, because you're overlooking what was at the time the scenic Lawrence Brook, and being along the route from New Brunswick, it was quite a popular stop for many who were heading down south to the shore. And he would add a ballroom to it, and the hotel thrived up until about the late 1910s, when the Department of Justice created a 5-mile dry zone, which ultimately forced the hotel to give up its liquor license. And by 1920, the hotel was no longer operational. And by 1955, Marion Thomas would purchase the place and would make it into an antique store. And 1979, it would be added to the National Registry of Historic Places. And we're grateful that this old house is still standing here. It is partially covered up by the plexiglass on the wall of the overlooking Route 18. So yeah. And now we get to Patrick's Corner. Oh, this is an interesting one. This was off of Riva Avenue. It was owned and operated by the Patricks, and if I can get to my notes here, so the Patricks emigrated to this country in the late 19th century, where they operated this here cider mill. And after his parents passed, Manning Patrick would take over the property, who many described as quite a character. His mill has apples delivered from as far as New York and Virginia. And he called his brew Patrick's Apple Brandy, and it took about 7 hours to make 1 barrel of cider. And Manning Patrick certainly had a lot of influence over the community, so much so that the residents could no longer deal with his shenanigans, and so in 1925 they held to a vote to rename the community, and it would become Brookview, since it was located along what was at the time the Lawrence Brook. This was before they named it Farrington Lake. And but now during Prohibition, that did not stop him from continuing his operations. By 1940, a third of their property got destroyed by a fire. And by 1943, after the authorities discovered they were selling illicit liquors, it would eventually be turned over to the Milltown Distilling Corporation, and production went to a complete halt by 1947. Manning Patrick would pass in 1949. His wife Tessie would eventually remarry, and she lived, I believe, well into the 1990s. But Manning Patrick was quite an interesting man. A lot can be said about him, but we don't have time for that. Now this over here, you might recognize this from my last presentation. This over here was formerly the site of the Miss Conover boarding school. When that shut down around 1912, around 1916, Gene Bickle, who developed a number of metropolitan hotels in the region, would purchase the place, and it would become the Villa Eugenie, and was definitely a perfect setting for a hotel. It's on top of a hill, and you're overlooking what was, I'm going to assume at the time, a scenic South River. But the hotel, managed to survive Prohibition, and it operated well into the late 1940s, and after a while it stood vacant, and in 1956 the top floor was destroyed by a fire, and in the picture you see the top part of that building was relatively recent, or at least recent compared to the age of the building. So yes, it is there now. Yep.
Historic district here in the museum.
Yep, over on River Road.
Our River Road, East Brunswick River Road.
Yes. So let's get to the bootlegging operations. Yes, there were such operations here in East Brunswick. The picture you see was the old Stout House on Fern Road. It was built in the 18th century. During the 1930s, though, it was there was a well there, and during Prohibition, it would be used to make booze, and it was definitely the right. It was definitely, and they certainly had the water for it, since they were right along the Ireland Brook. But supposedly it was operated by a gangster from Newark, which might have played a factor in the murders that took place there in the 1930s that resulted in the deaths of 3 gangsters. But that's a subject in and of itself. But now as I mentioned, Patrick's Corner, Prohibition laws did not get in their way. I should also mention that the Heidenrotzers, who lived on Riva Avenue, they had a speakeasy down in their basement, and there was also I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Frank Orzechowski, he had his farm on Fresh Ponds Road got raided by the state after they were caught bootlegging and operating an illicit liquor license, or whatever you want to call that. But basically, when the authorities came, 4 men tried to escape. Only 1 was caught, and East Brunswick's bootlegging activities was very minimal compared to the ones on the coastal towns, but there was still a bit of it happening there, and there might have been even more than what I mentioned, but I don't think many of the people who were around then and could are still around to tell us about it. Now, you all know this place right here. This. So, yep, this is the Grove. Now this place, it originally started out as Miller's Tavern. It was owned and operated by Henry W. Miller, who previously operated a tavern over on South Main Street in Milltown, where the Ice Cream Depot currently is. And 1937, he erected this brand new building on Milltown Road, and he would operate it for the next few years until about 1940, when Martin Zimmerman would take over, and it would become Marty's Tavern. And by 1946, a group of stockholders would purchase the place, and it would become what we know today as the Brunswick Grove. Now, during those early days, they would hold a lot of annual picnics there by the New Brunswick Turners and other organizations. I should also mention somebody died in the basement. The handyman, John Other, died in 1955 after suffering a heart attack. But it's a true testament, that the place has lasted as long as it did. It's, I think, the only bar / tavern from the post-Prohibition age that's still left in this town. So and hopefully it will last even longer. Now over here, on Old Bridge Turnpike and River Road, there was the Old Mill Inn. This was operated by Stanley, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Biernacki. And one interesting to note about that was that he one night a man came in intoxicated, and he wanted a drink, and but Bernacchi told him that he owed money from his tab. He denied this and proceeded to physically eject him from the bar, and only to then take him back inside and lock him up in the corner, or so that's what he claimed. And so he sued the owner for about $15,000, and this was in the 1930s, mind you. And I think the case went all the way to like the state Supreme Court, I think. And while the judge did not buy his story, they did award the man $1,800, which Bernacchi had to pay, and he would not follow through, and he would be jailed for it. And but by that point, he was already out of the picture. It went through a number of different owners over the years before, in 1957, it would become the more remembered Pete's La Pizza. And now it is a vacant lot. All right, so this could be a whole subject in and of itself. The Wagon Wheel Inn. Now, this is not the wagon wheel you might be thinking of. I'll discuss that one next. But this wagon wheel was located off of Route 18, or at that time was Route S28. It was boasted as the largest roadside house in New Jersey when it opened in 1934. The bar itself was 90 feet long. It could fit like 1,200 people. It was a very happening place for a brief period, and frequently hosted. There was Governor Harold Hoffman, whom, of course, you might know from his connection to this community, as his grandfather, James Crawford Tom, lived in the village of Old Bridge. And but now, of course, he wasn't just hosted there so much because he was governor at the time, but the proprietor of the place, John Callahan, he and Hoffman grew up in the same neighborhood together. So obviously the two went way back. But yeah, there was a lot going on there. It was quite a happening place, and that all came to an end in 1935 when the state would raid the place after discovering they were selling bootleg liquor. They were charged $875, shut down the place for several months. It would reopen later that year, operated by Edward Leonard, and things did not get any better when in 1936 a blizzard would collapse the roof. And ultimately, they never really recovered, and shut down for good in 1936. And after that, it became a used car lot. And then, need I say more?
Can you describe what a roadhouse means?
It was like a little inn, and it was pretty much it it was a place people would stop at, and was you know, those were quite maybe some.
Like a Buc-ee's?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Oh,
yes.
yeah,
That would.
truck stop?
Yeah, that would.
Oh,
Yes, that sounds accurate.
Booze, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, they're big in the South.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
So now, as I mentioned, this is not to be confused with the other wagon wheel that existed. Now, this was this was Dobrinsky's Hall slash the Polish wagon wheel, as it would later become known. This was it was owned and operated by Joseph and Anna Dobrinsky, who immigrated to this country from Poland in 1920, and they would open up a little like a little hall over on what is now Joseph Street, and yes, that he was whom they named the street for, Joseph Dobrinsky, and once Prohibition was done with, they would add the bar, and it was quite a popular place. A lot of like picnics, clam bakes would go on there, and the New York Yankees would stop by there on their way to and from their games. Among them, including Babe Ruth, who also used to swing by at the nearby Lawrenceburg Country Club, which I will discuss later. But eventually, they would sell the place to the Tom Chucks, and later it would be the flagship restaurant, and that would last until like the 90s, and by 2000 it was burned in a fire, and now there are houses in that area. Now, the Club Chateau. This was located on Route 18. I believe where the Goodyear tire station is now. This was quite a lively little nightclub. They had entertainers come in, and you'll notice in one of the advertisements they advertise 6 beautiful girls. Not something you would see today, but the Frank Blue, who was the projectionist at the RKO Rivoli in New Brunswick, served as the booking agent for the talent that used to stop by, and eventually it would become Jean's Chateau, and it burned in the fire, like a lot of these places did.
Intentionally.
And it would be rebuilt as the Tropical Garden. It cost about $9,000 to rebuild, and outside of liquor license suspension, the place continued, I believe, well into the 1960s, I believe, and so yeah. But anyways, now this place was went through a number of different names. It was first known as the Jackpot Inn. It was operated by Charles Fodor of the Fodor Farm, and they would have a number of entertainers that would come by there and perform, and it was certainly a lively place, for what was a very small structure. And that would eventually become the Lakeview Inn, and then after a while it became the Hilltop Inn, and that would continue well into the 1950s, when by around 1957, two guys would buy out their liquor license, and the structure today is where the convenience store is, and it is now this is the sort of place you wouldn't even know it was even a tavern, if you lived through it. But Sabo's Tavern was operated by Paul and Mary Sabo. At least it first opened around 1935. Like the whole place was basically a shack. This was mostly just for area residents. There was no signage or anything. Like, you'd walk in, there'd be a few bar stools and a couple tables, and it, I believe, continued to operate, I think, well into the early 1970s, I think, and today it's now a private home. Now you might recognize this place. This was the Pleasant View Inn. It was built as part of the Pleasant View farm that once existed. And if I can get to my notes here, it was operated by the Boehmers. That's Boehmer. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And the structure was built in 1889 as a farmhouse, and then they eventually made it into a little inn, and it was certainly a nice setting for it. If you drive along that road, you'll know how hilly Riders Lane can be. So one would imagine you would get a fine view of the road, before they built up everything. But
That's at the very top of Riders Lane.
yes, it is.
Walk away from Sullivan Way.
Yes. So
Indian restaurant now.
yes, it is. Yes, I went through a number of different places over the years. Some of you might remember it as the Italian kitchen. But it's still standing. All right, and now finally, the Lawrence Brook Country Club. If you follow my work, I wrote a whole thing about this place, and but basically, this was the golf club was established in the 1926, and it did pretty well during the first few years, and then the Depression happened, and it was downhill after that. But at the country club there was a clubhouse, and they would assumably by the time Prohibition was repealed, they would serve alcohol. Initially, it was served to only members of the club, but then they started to expand over to non-members, and that caused their license to be suspended for about a month. And it's where Lawrence Brook neighborhood is now. I think a little further off. I'd have to check, but
It's part of the New Jersey Tank
as seems to be expected with most of these places, it burned in a fire. And so they never rebuilt it. The golf course continued to operate, as is, but by 1948 they could not recuperate from their losses, and they shut it down, and now the Lawrence Brook neighborhood sits in its place. But anyways, yeah. So for such a quiet, sleepy, rural town like East Brunswick was, there were certainly quite a few places people could go to in the area, and yes.
You mentioned a lot of places burned down. Do you have any, I know this is not the exact subject, any information as far as the fire department, what it was like, when did it start, and was it a small organization? Because I know now we have three.
Well, which one?
East Brunswick. I know all these.
There's
so many fires.
First there was Old Bridge, then Independent, then Brookview.
Do you know when they started?
Old Bridge, I think, Old Bridge was the first one. That started in the 1900s. Independent was established in the 1930s, and Brookview was established in the 1940s.
Brookview's on Ruby Avenue.
Yes.
And Old Bridge is in the historic district.
Yep.
Where's Independence home?
That's yeah, Lawrence, the Lawrence Brook area, and Dunham's Corner, and also on Joseph Street. That's their main headquarters. So.
Do a lecture on that.
I feel like that should be left to a firefighter, but yeah. So these places were a testament to how East Brunswick was in those early days when there wasn't a whole lot to do or really go to. So it was nice for residents that for these places it it saved them a trip to New Brunswick or South River or even Newark. But well, that concludes the presentation. Thank you all.